Last time we left off, we went 10 minutes straight and then added some more things. Now, I'm going to scroll down in this video. I want to show you this. Now you have the ancient, oops, well that's fine, that really doesn't matter. Here you go. I'm going to show you all the videos of Horace Butler, and we're going to look at all the low numbers. As if nobody gives a shit that the information's out there. Ancient America's in the Bible. Alright, so America's and Bible in the title. 6,700 views. That's it. You got you stuff a cat down somebody's butt crack on this thing, and you'll get millions of views. America's in the Bible. Relatively no views. Horace Butler, When Rocks Cry Out, it's roughly, out of a million, same bracket, around 5,000, 6,000 views. KTL presents, this is on Tyrone Street. He's got 9,000 views. He breaks that mold. When Rocks Cry Out, book trailer, 5,000 views. Rocks Cry Out, 4,000 views. So, this information about our history has been here for some time. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's something that is keeping us apart. It's the knowledge of who we all are. And I don't mean we're all Hebrew or anything like that. The problem is, if ancient Egypt came to America, that means the black Egyptians are here. If the Hebrews followed and overthrew them, that means there's animosity between the two groups. That means both groups have afros. At this point in history, you can see why they haven't gotten along. If the Egyptians came here, and they were Canaanites here already, and we hear more that they're Canaanite areas, and we rarely hear anything about Egypt, but we always hear about American Indian this, American Indian that, then there was some kind of power struggle between the Egyptians and the Canaanites. Both of Ham's children, both African bloodlines. So there is also Moab, who is Hebrew and Afro. Well, actually, they're Hebrew and they could be Afro or they could be Hebrew with... they are the children of Lot, period. They could have Afros, but for right now, it seems they have straight hair. Or slightly curled to no curl. That seems to be Moab. Amorites have waves. We can depict everybody by the phenotype right now. Bring out every book that depicts what and who everybody is. This is not hard anymore. It's time consuming. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's time consuming. Which isn't a problem. Because I already told him, I got the time for you. I said, you had the time to make me, to form me. I have the time. I have all the time that you can create for me to use to give right back. All the time in the world. So, we're going to go back to the 8 minute and 40-second mark, because this is where the next comment that breaks past the 10-minute mark starts. Okay, so we don't want to hear 10 minutes and then hear it out of context. We want to hear it in context, so we have to go back to 8:40. Now, this is really important. Watch this. Comments. Somebody sent me a comment, but I already approved it. Oh, that's why it's not right there on the screen. That's great. Lex, did you know that in Utah there is a creek called Montezuma Creek? It almost borders Arizona and the southeastern part of the state. And he sends me a link. And that's awesome. Hey, if you guys have comments, leave links. I don't want to believe you. You don't want to trust me, which you have every right not to. I don't want you to trust me either. I'll have you doing silly stuff if you trust me. Don't trust any man. Right? I've said that from the start. Don't trust anybody. That's how come every time I do anything, I show you. Right? Was wondering if you happen to come across any info about this on your research. So he sends a link, and we're looking for Montezuma Creek. And here we go. This comes up. Let's see if we can blow it up. Okay, so there you got your delta, right? And then you have your Nephi. Isn't this Egyptian stuff? Or that's Mormon stuff, your Nephi. And then you have your delta. That's Egyptian stuff. So here you have the Spanish coming all through here. Spanish fork. Now this is important. You'll find out why in 5 minutes. 5 measly minutes. You'll find out why. Alright, so here you have the desert of Moab. Starts here, right? And the desert of Moab goes all the way into Arizona into what? Phoenix. Ends right at Phoenix. See, all this is the desert of Moab. So when the Bible says the desert of Moab, it's talking about all this. See how here's Reef National Park is part of Moab. Canyons National Park is part of Moab. Arches National Park is part of Moab. All these parks is part of Moab. Bryce Canyon Park is part of Moab. So I'm not even sure like the complete area that's considered the national parks, or that's considered the Moab Desert, but it's pretty much right in there. Now here's the most fucked up thing. Are you ready? Remember, John Wesley Powell, right? What's right there in the center? Lake Powell. This motherfucker came in there and incorporated himself into the Moab Desert. Anybody know that there's that much water in the damn desert? I'm not so afraid of going in the desert now. It's just, everything that we've been highlighting. I've been highlighting right now is all right here. There ain't no damn giant lake all the way up into that. But look at that, man. Powell, prick Powell put his name on the lake. What do you even say about that, man? Salt Lake City somewhere. I'm not sure. But, Wyoming, Idaho. Wow, I haven't looked at a map for a long time. There's Colorado over there. Okay, so I thought Colorado was above Utah. That's embarrassing. There's Salt Lake City real big. So, yeah, see, I'm horrible with maps. See Ephraim right here? It just says Ephraim. Right? So you should just go and see Enoch right down there? Why do they have all these biblical names there? There's Kanab. Remember we were looking at Kanab? Kana. Okay? So, there's Montezuma Creek. That's what he wanted us to see. Montezuma Creek. Monticello. That's also something that has to do with Mexico. Now listen, this is why it's important.
I see, excellent. And that's why I totally agree, Brother Horace, because many times, before I just turned 48 years old, and I've been studying Black history and many things for many years. And when we talk about, when the brothers and sisters here in the United States, when we talk about our history, two things that we always attach to ourselves, ancient Kemet and slavery. And you're absolutely right. I find that, many people,
ancient Kemet and slavery is the two things that we attach to ourselves. That is the division that separates us too, constantly. ancient Kemet dealing with what the Bible says, Egypt, Mizrahim, a land of bondage, right? Where were you in bondage? And that leads to versus slavery. The Israelites are known for being born into slavery.
This very day still believe that black people didn't touch Western civilization shores until we were dragged over here in slave ships. For some reason or another, many of them cannot grasp the fact that we were already here. And we were all over the place. And yes, to this day, you're absolutely right. That knowledge is still being resisted. People hold in their heads that, we didn't see this part of the globe until we arrived on slave ships.
Yeah, well, I eventually found that even slavery was a part of hiding the information. When Spain came into the Americas in the 1500s following Columbus, they knew what was here. We were taught in school that Columbus was trying to get to the Far East, and he stumbled across the Americas and that kind of thing. That's not what happened. Columbus knew what was over here. The Crusades had already been coming to the Americas. I mean, once you have ancient Egypt in the Americas and David taking that capital city of peace and making it the Jerusalem, in fact, it was already a city that was close to that name. It was built to honor the African Heru, and they just switched the name just a little bit. Heru became Jeru. But once you understand that Jerusalem was sitting in South America, then you have to understand that this is where the Crusades were coming.
So, when the Bible says that Ephraim's in the north and Judah is in the south, you're being told for the last 4 years that Jerusalem is in Peru. Now listen again, because this is somebody completely different telling you. This is somebody you've never heard before.
But once you understand that Jerusalem was sitting in South America, then you have to understand that this is where the Crusades were coming. So they knew of the history of the Americas. They knew the Holy Lands were here. That's why they're always getting on ships and coming to the Crusades. You could walk from where they're calling themselves Italy and France, and you could...
Here, I'll put it to you like this. Yeah, he makes a good point there. You can walk from Italy and France and shit to the Middle East. Alright, listen, they said the Crusades were about the Knights Templar going into the ruins of Jerusalem and finding the books of witchcraft that the king buried under the throne so nobody could get to him. Okay? That's what it's really about. So they say they discovered this stuff and the Crusades ended. Right? When you go and chase down the books that they found, it has to do with Aztec magic. It does not have Middle East names on the books of witchcraft that they found. The books of witchcraft that they found were Aztec magic. They were codexes.
The Crusades were coming. So they knew of the history of the Americas. They knew the Holy Lands were here. That's why they're always getting on ships and coming to the Crusades. You could walk from where they're calling themselves Italy and France, and you could walk to that place they're now calling Middle East, but they were always in ships, because you can't walk to the Americas from that Italy there. You've got to get in ships. And when I would look at those ancient accounts, not ancient, when I would look into the medieval accounts, and some of the ancient ones, to try to follow them on their voyage, it would always stop at the ports. It would be that they were getting in the ships, and then there would be a series of periods or something showing that this text has been deleted, or it's not there, or not important. And then they would arrive at the Holy Land, or at Constantinople, which was in the Americas as well. And then they would go to the Holy Land. Even when you would see these movies, that were coming out of Hollywood, when they would address that part of the subject, they would say things like, well, to find your way to the Holy Lands, to find your way to ancient Jerusalem, go to where the men speak Italian, and then, get on the ships and then go to the place where they speak it no more, that kind of crap. But really what they were saying is they were getting into the ships in Italy, and then they were sailing across the Atlantic, and they were coming into the Americas, and then they were making their way to the Holy Land. So Columbus knew this, the churches knew this, Spain knew this. The problem was not, we don't believe that there is a land over there. The problem was the last time they had come over with these armed forces, they had gotten so devastated and they had been defeated so well that they had stopped coming. They did not try it again. The blacks and the others here had said, you slaughtered us so mercilessly in your first crusade and in the others that we are finally at an end of you. So if we see you again, we're going to return the death on you that you brought to us. And so a lot of the people quit coming to the Holy Lands in the Americas, and those became known as the Dark Ages, because when you're not in a land and you're in Europe, you don't know what's going on in the Americas, and that becomes a dark era. You don't know what's going on in the Holy Lands. So, that preceded Columbus coming over. So Columbus's battle with the churches was not that I know how to get to Japan or something. That wasn't what the conversation was. It was, okay, once you get over there, if we're going to invest in this, how do we know that these ships are going to return, and how do we know that this is just not going to be death? That people are not going to just be killed once you get back over there. And so the secret order to Columbus was, okay, we want you to go to Panama, where Egypt long ago had started building the canal, because once we go over into the Caribbean to reach Jerusalem, we still have to get to the Pacific side so that we can get to that city in South America that is and was ancient Jerusalem. So his order was, get to Panama, see what the military situation is, see if we really can take that place. We want to launch one more crusade and try it one more time. And Columbus came into the islands. We now have Haiti and Dominican Republic and some of the others. And I guess he got a little afraid himself. He didn't come into the mainland. And then he kind of got addicted to the drugs and the women and the other things, trying to find gold. And eventually they sent soldiers to put him in chains and to bring him back to Spain. And to tell him, you didn't fulfill the obligation. The obligation was for you to check the military situation at Panama. And so on his fourth voyage, he made a beeline from Spain to Panama to check the situation, to check if it was, in fact, lightly enough guarded that they could launch an invasion and take that place. And then he went to South America, didn't go into it. He pretty much stayed on those ships. But he made the strange comment when he got to the Orinoco River that's coming out of the northern coast of South America, and he says this river has its origin in paradise. It was one of the strangest things to be written by him. There was one other that's stranger, but this one was strange, unless you knew that this was where the ancient cities and the ancient histories had occurred. And he was right. The Orinoco River does originate in the mountains of South America, where Jerusalem and some of the other holy places were, and where Adam had lived. Adam, do I want to say this? Let's hold this one. Adam
no. This is Occult Science Radio. There's no hold bar here.
We'll bring him out later. Adam is in the Egyptian records. He is named in the Egyptian records very clearly. You will see him under the name A-T-U-M. And Atom becomes Adam. He is Amen. He is the founder of Egypt.
Okay, so he's saying that Adam of the Bible is the founder of Egypt, and he's recorded as A-T-U-M. Now, people made fun of me. I said if I have a child, I'm going to name him after the element in respect to what we read in the Bible, and I was going to name my child, if I have a child, A-T-O-M. People made fun of me. But, now you hear the ocean is brought up. Alright, and when the ocean is brought up, I want to read something to you. It says, Genesis 9:25, and he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brother. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Tents are homes, right? And Canaan shall be his servant. Now, when we go to 9:27, and it says that there's a precept, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. The precept leads to the New Testament. Now this bothers me because you know how I feel. Most people know how I feel about the New Testament. It is Greek and Roman writing. It is not written by Hebrews. The Old Testament is written by God's people and God's spokesmen. The New Testament is written by the devil's spokesman, Paul. Now, it says here in a precept to the New Testament, Ephesians 2:13, 2:14, and 3:6. So, pause this, turn to Ephesians chapter 2 and 13 and 14, and also chapter 3 and verse 6. Now, listen to this. It says 13 and 14, Ephesians 2 and 13. But now in Christ Jesus, right? This Serapis Christus, whom ye who sometimes were far off, are made nigh, close, by the blood of Christ. You understand what that means? You, the Christians, used to be on the other side of the world, but because of the blood of your God, Serapis Christus, you are nigh. When they say the end is nigh, that means near. That means you were far away from the holy people, the righteous people. But now, because of the blood of Jesus Christ, You're close to them. Now you're going to go dwell in their tents. Listen, 14. For he is our priest. Peace. This is to the Gentile, right? He who come by the sword. He is our peace, who hath made both one. Are we not intermingled in a Babylonian system? Doesn't God destroy Babylonian systems? Jesus did this to us. The Gentiles that are of the blood of Japheth, that are mentally insane, came over, murdered us, and dwelled in our fucking homes. Doesn't even Jesus have a prophecy about the thief that comes in and murders the man and dwells in his home? Don't we have psychological readings about thieves that commit home invasions and then live in the fucking person's home? Is that not what colonization is? Let's go kill somebody and live in their stead and fuck their wife and raise their children. Now we got a new language. My dad didn't teach me no fucking new language. White people did. I go to school, it's a white teacher. Do you understand what is written in Ephesians based on what has happened in the world? Nobody's going to tell you this in a public building in a suit and fucking tie. They don't want to tell you your European neighbors came over and stabbed your father in the throat because he didn't have a Christian prince. Because he couldn't speak the language of the invader. Nobody's going to say, just like Germans and Polacks are occupying Israel, Japhet people are occupying Shem people. People that call themselves Europeans now call themselves Americans. If I was born in a hospital, and am I a hospilian? We're dealing with the psychotic peoples surrounding us that turned us psychotic. We are poisoned. Listen to Paul. Because of the fucking blood of this motherfucker, we can get near them. Do you even understand this? The Lord, Creator, separated us, but because of this Son of God. There are many sons of God. Even Lucifer is a son of God. Because of this Son of God, we can get next to him and steal their fucking crops and steal their fucking gold and steal their fucking silver and kill their fucking fathers and fuck their fucking mothers and teach their kids a bastard language and lie to the kids every step of the goddamn way because of Jesus motherfucking Christ. And you're telling me to worship Christ? I think we have a misunderstanding. I think we have a misunderstanding. I'll shoot you in the fucking face before I worship Christ. And you don't understand that because everything hasn't been taken from you. You'll never understand that until your chickens come home to roost. Dead or alive, I'm going to see it. In the end, we're all going to see it. Now I'm going to put a little fire under everybody's ass so they talk just like me. And they read this book just like me. But now in Christ Christ Jesus. Ye who are sometimes far away, you're made nigh by the blood of Christ. You're brought close to the Hebrews because of blood. And what'd you do when you got to the Hebrews? You shed their fucking blood, and you call it justified. And then you preach lies that, oh, you are from fucking Africa, and we used bait and cages and we used blow darts to fucking capture you, and nets. And we had cowboys, and we put them on ships to Africa, and they outran the cowboys, and they used lasso fucking tricks. They use lasso tricks to catch you. Shut the fuck up. 14. Listen. We're together Babylonian, but these words are for the Christian, not the Hebrew. For he is our peace. We're here in this goddamn country that you invaded, and you live in peace, and we live in goddamn terror. From you! And your fucking laws! And your curb justice! And your double-sided goddamn Liberty Bell! And how many black people act like Nat Turner? None! And how many goddamn white people act like Nat Turner and eradicate anything? Oh, well, there's a fucking list. There's a list of Caucasians that just go fucking nuts and kill any and everybody. Dylan Klebo and that other fuckhead in Colorado sat there and said a bunch of racist shit and only killed 2 or 3 black people. Killed a bunch of white people. Do I sound insensitive? He's not my fucking kid! I didn't raise him to kill! For he is your Christianity peace. For this is a Christian nation where we deal with Christian slavery. Where the white man can go and take any fucking thing from the black. And no one will say shit. Who have made both one. It ain't saying that he is peace for both of us. He's peace. This is the fucking Liberty Bell. He's peace for one side, but made 2 sides one. Babylon. This is your fucking Jesus. You don't even know how to read this book. And have broken down the middle wall of partition between us. The ocean. Finally, the Christian nations are able to sail. Greeks and Romans were able to sail over and over again. Finally, it's the Christians' turn. And it seems their wars are more devastating. More wars today during the block of Christian rule than ever before in history combined. But they're good guys because they're white and we live in white supremacy. And they push cultural hegemony on us to shape our fucking beliefs about them.
That's your Adam of the Genesis account, of the biblical account. It's Atom, A-T-U-M, becomes A-D-A-M. He's the same guy. And it's Amen, under his several names of Amen and Amun and Amun and all of those. So when you get into the biblical records, you're going to get to Revelations 3 and 14. You're going to see a strange verse that talks about this man called Amen, A-M-E-N, who lived at the first of creation. Well, for you to understand that, you have to understand that Genesis is not talking about the creation of the world. That's a mistake that we thought Genesis is talking about. Genesis is a record of Egypt, of the African nation, the empire that became known as Egypt. These are the Egyptian priests writing the history of their nation. And that part was adopted and put into the biblical writings along with later accounts of what was happening in Egypt. And so they're beginning it at the formation of Egypt, when Ammon lived. That's why when Cain kills his brother, he's concerned that people in the world will kill him for the murder that he's committed. And it says that when he left this place, he went into a city and took himself a wife. Well, if you've got Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and now Cain has slain his brother, you don't have a city you can go to. You don't have a city of people. You're at the beginning, if this is the beginning of the world. But that's not what that's about. That's an African record about the history of the African civilization that became known as Egypt. Columbus and the churches knew that in his day. He talked about this river Orinoco coming down out of the mountains and saying it originated in paradise. The other strange thing that Columbus mentioned and wrote about.
So Columbus is saying, and this is being considered one of the. You got to understand, this is very important. He's saying this river, the Orinoco or something like that, is coming from the top of this mountain, and this mountain is a paradise. Now, word of the wise is I hear some people dream about this mountain. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, as he just stated, the other thing that's strange that Columbus wrote about.
And Washington Irving put it into his biography of Columbus as well, is that Columbus would go around talking about how he was going to capture Jerusalem when he made it into the Americas. Now, some scholars would argue, no, he did not say that he was going to capture Jerusalem in the Americas. Well, we don't have any record of him going to the Middle East to try to capture it over there. He knew that it was over here, and he really did have these high dreams that he would lead the crusade that would recapture ancient Jerusalem. So, when we talk about slave ships and that era, we have to understand that after Columbus, then they sent the armies back in. He had done some of the surveillance work to see where the armies were, some of it. And then they came in. Now here's the strange thing. When you see Spain come in and capture Mexico, and when they write this history, when Prescott and others wrote this history of the invasion of the Americas, they title it The Invasion and Capture of Mexico and the Invasion and Capture of Peru. Well, if you look on anybody's map, you'll see how far those two lands are apart. And to find Peru, you really have to know something about the Americas, because it's hidden in a mountain on the backside of South America. Well, wow, in a mountain and the other one. But when you talk about an invasion, and you're talking about capturing two places that are as distantly related as Mexico and Peru.
This is huge. I mean, this is like saying, you're going to capture the Middle East, as well as saying, you're going to capture Timbuktu, Mali. It's Peru is closer to the ocean, but it's just not that close. Like he said, you've got to go to the backside of the mountain on the other side of the continent. You have to find a way around South America.
That should signal you that something is going on. But that's exactly what was happening. They were capturing the capital, the ancient capital of Egypt, Memphis, that was built in Mexico. That's why all those pyramids are all over that place. And then they went and captured Jerusalem, the other Egyptian capital that had been Thebes in South America. So the clues are everywhere for you to see it. And people, then you can.
Wow, this is powerful. I mean, I'm sitting here, and I'm in total awe, because this is all very groundbreaking information. But I wanted to touch on something, Brother, that you and I had been discussing just the other day, and just the information that you revealed then, just blew me away. You were talking about Delphi, and please, brother, that's what I have been wanting to lead up to, because the little bit of information you dropped off on me then, that's why I was so anxious for this evening to come, because I really wanted you to expound on that. Yeah, please share your views and your knowledge on Delphi.
Alright, we're going to stop there. You can always go and watch the video yourself. In the next part, he's going to talk about the Greeks being black. And somebody had just sent me a link in the comments that showed, in the link that they sent me, in the videos down on the side, that's why I was looking down to see if it was this video. In the videos on the side right here, it said the original Greeks were black. In fact, let's see. Yeah, I mean, this fucking beast is always listening, alright? Like, I could have said the original Greeks were Italian, instead of Greek, but, it already knows what I'm gonna do, because, there's Eli ben Israel with 3 parts, maybe more. Original Greeks were black. Here's somebody else. Original Greeks were black. Israel united in Christ. Here's black, Roman, and Greek. Race in antiquity in Eurasia. Hidden black images of Eurasia. Again, he's going to go into the tomb of Achilles or Achilles' son. He's going to go into a lot of stuff. In fact, I should just keep playing now that I already typed this in. But go up to Brad Pitt and say, how do you feel like making your career off of playing ancient black men? There's modern Egyptians do not descend from ancient Egyptians, So they're telling you that area was usurped and people are proxy. They're pretending to be the bloodline of the originals, and they're not. This is why one of the scriptures in the Bible says that Egyptians and Syrians will get their own kingdom afterwards, because those blood groups were originally dark skinned. First Chinese were black. You already know what happened in Cambodia. You had black people that were overthrown for the intermingling of the Chinese empress and that king at the time. Here, we'll listen to some more.
Okay. Before we get to Delphi,
so he just talked about. We just listened to him explain that the conquest for Jerusalem was in South America. I told you, if your ass thinks that you're a Judean, you were brought up here from South America on a fucking boat. They set your ass in the water for a couple months to starve you out, and then they brought you on the land in North America, to the land of Ephraim. I've been telling you this over and over and over again, and you don't want to hear it.
Let's put in one thing, because if your listeners are like others who have heard this, they are sitting there thinking, wait a minute, there's a problem in all this. We've got pyramids on the Nile in Northeast Africa. We have Egypt there. Why would you say that Egypt is in the Americas when we can clearly see that Egypt is right here where these pyramids and the Sphinx are? To clear that up, you have to understand that there was an African civil war in the Americas. The biblical writings refer to it in their writings under the book called Exodus and some of those nearby. When these blacks revolted and had this civil war against the other blacks that were Egypt in the Americas, that tore Egypt apart. When you read what was happening in those wars and the killings, the outright slaughters, they were ashamed what's happening at Rwanda and some of these other places now.
So listen, here's a guess. Here's my guess. So it states that the Israelites go on a 40-year journey. So I think that they left Egypt, went towards Asia, and then up through Asia, over across what's called one of the great highways. They come down Alaska from Canada, and we know it ends, the Moses Trail ends in Utah. So while they're on the road 40 years, Egypt is torn apart. The 10 plagues just hit. Right? So what do the Egyptians do? One of the books taken out of the Bible by the Catholic Church, I forget which book, it says that they took the Lord took the king of Egypt, flew the king of Egypt to what, Palestine, or they combined with the what's their name? I have to go to Genesis 11 real quick. It's the people that were before they became Palestinians. They had a name. Cathorum, and the Casulium, out of whom came Philistum and Cathorum. So the book taken out of the Bible says Cathor is Philistine. Philistine is the name I'm trying to say. And since Joshua's exploits deal with the Philistine, David's exploits deal with the Philistine after, after Joshua and after the Judges. That means the Philistines are on the land that Moses dies on anyway. So they're here in the Americas as well.
Called Exodus and some of those nearby. When these blacks revolted and had this civil war against the other blacks that were Egypt.
So 40 years. It's enough time for Egypt to build any kind of sailing device and come to the Americas and set up their shop. It's also the land is big enough, and Joshua going around destroying Canaanite kingdoms. It's easy for another set of people from what we call the old world to come over here to this side of the world during that 40-year period or afterwards.
Americas that tore Egypt apart. When you read what was happening in those wars and the killings, the outright slaughters, they were ashamed what's happening at Rwanda and some of these other places now. Or they will show you that those same kinds of horrendous things were going on in ancient times. And that's what was happening. And they had the upper hand. They were stronger under Moses and Joshua and some of these other African leaders. And they were winning.
So I know I'm taking this in and out of context, but basically what he's saying, when you compare what happened in Rwanda and things like that, it seems that it is a Hamite-Shemite war going on in Africa. or it's the retaliation from the history of the Hamite-Shemite war that goes on in Africa. This is the same reason that we do not get along here in the Americas. And people will not understand that.
Blacks revolted and had the civil war against the other blacks that were Egypt in the Americas that tore Egypt apart. When you read what was happening in those wars and the killings, the outright slaughters, they will shame what's happening at Rwanda and some of these other places now. Or they will show you that those same kinds of horrendous things were going on in ancient times. And that's what was happening. And they had the upper hand. They were stronger under Moses and Joshua and some of these other African leaders. And they were winning against these African cities that were Egypt. And when you read that they were going to destroy them to their very root, was the understanding. Then those that were able got out of the Americas. They fled, that were running Egypt. And they went. They couldn't go to West Africa because that was one of the bases for the book.
Okay, so he's talking about the Canaanites now. When he just says Africans, and he's not talking about Egyptians, he's talking about the Canaanites going on their dispersal from the revolt of Moses and Joshua.
Moses and Joshua and some of these other African leaders, and they were winning against these African cities that were Egypt.
Okay, so there are two different sets of Africans as he's describing. You have the Africans, the Hebrews that are born on African soil with Moses and Joshua, and people like you, who later they call Isus, who chased the Canaanites through the northern region of Scandinavia, like we recently read. Again, there's no evidence that Joshua leaves the Americas once this military campaign starts. But somebody chased those Canaanites through those areas. And I'm going to back up just a little bit again. Go back a minute this time.
That Egypt is in the Americas when we can clearly see that Egypt is right here where these pyramids and the Sphinx are. To clear that up, you have to understand that there was an African civil war in the Americas. The biblical writings refer to it in their writings under the book of Exodus and some of those nearby. When these blacks revolted and had the civil war against the other blacks that were Egypt in the Americas that tore Egypt apart. When you read what was happening in those wars and the killings, the outright slaughters, they will shame what's happening at Rwanda and some of these other places now. Or they will show you that those same kinds of horrendous things were going on in ancient times. And that's what was happening. And they had the upper hand. They were stronger under Moses and Joshua and some of these other African leaders. And they were winning against these African cities that were Egypt. And when you read that they were going to destroy them to their very root, was the understanding. Then those that were able got out of the Americas. They fled, that were running Egypt. And they went. They couldn't go to West Africa because that was one of the bases for the blacks that were known as Hebrews. They had made it to West Africa out of them.
So what he's saying is they could not during the Exodus. Not everybody went with Moses. Some went into West Africa and set up base. So when this happened, that the Canaanites already got word of this because the Israelites left on foot. So the Canaanites, 40 years later, when this campaign begins, the Canaanites know they can't go back to the area of West Africa. They can probably go other places, but they can't go back to West Africa because the Africans, the people born on Africa's soil, even though they're Shem, the Africans known as the Hebrews, already conquered this area and are living there while everybody else is on that march with Moses.
got out of the Americas. They fled. That were running Egypt. And they couldn't go to West Africa because that was one of the bases for the blacks that were known as Hebrews. They had made it to West Africa out of the Americas before they launched their attack on the Americas. So they couldn't go to West Africa. That was the strength. That was walking into the mouth of the lion. So they went around to the eastern side of Africa and formed a second civilization there, an offshoot of the one that had come here. Now, to be clear, the Africans who had formed the Egypt in the Americas had come from Africa to begin with. So the ideas that they brought to the Americas were already flowering in Africa. And when you look at Chepset's temple on the Nile, the ancient temple there, you know, it's clearly written when they talk about the expeditions to Punt that Egypt's understanding was that they had come from
the expeditions to Put, P-H-U-T. See, this is why most historians say, well, we don't know what happened to Put because his temples and his civilization is here in the Americas. And either Spaniards wiped them out or Portuguese wiped them out, or they didn't write about them. See, what we go off of the writings of the Spaniards. I haven't really, truthfully, I've never heard one historian say these are the writings of the Portuguese. So Portuguese explorers and Portuguese conquerors experienced something completely different. It seems that the Spanish conquerors mainly went after the Hebrews and mainly went after the Egyptians. But again, there are different blood groups, like the Perizzites, like the Moabites. There's a complete Mayan temple and civilization that's buried under the city of Atlanta. and all those black people were right there in Atlanta. And we're too busy keeping up with technology to dig in the ground or to investigate our own area. I mean, even me, I'm digging through history, and while I'm trying to dig through history, all this stuff exists in Ohio, and then when I find out that it exists in Ohio, I have to ignore it because I'm already digging through this other stuff. Now you see it from Babylon to Timbuktu, the Khmers, the stolen legacy. They came before Columbus. And you see, we're Hebrews and we're Egyptians. But our real title at this point is pre-Columbus. Because of this guy. This right now is the head of who fucked us. Somebody living today owns most of his material and keeps to his standards. It has been implemented into this system.
A civilization that was on the eastern.
You see, this is the books that he uses. He'll tell you in this video, in this this radio program, that by the book, and the book he links all the sources, and I believe this is a pile of the source material. Okay, as you can see, it says the Aztecs right there. This is Kabbalistic Encyclopedia right there. So information about us is written all throughout this. You know, I mean, when you start combining all this shit with what Farrakhan says about these people coming over here to subjugate us, and that's all they do, and what Malachi Z says, that these people are the living dead, and that they need us, you know. I mean, Malachi Z says some funny shit, you know. I mean, you know, they hate you so bad, you know, they enslave you here then they go on vacation, they go to fucking Jamaica, and it's just nothing but you there, you know. And they go on vacation to get away from the other white people, but to be around you by themselves. Now, isn't that weird? Like so, you know, it right now it is what we made it, and it's what they made it, and now that we don't have control over it, you know, then that's where you say it is what it is, because you don't have control over it, you know. That really pisses me off, you know, because we can control anything, and right now we're controlling the past. So even though we can't control, you know, the tomorrow, you know, the actual date tomorrow for us, but we can control 5 years from now. And this is what we aren't comprehending, you know.
Inside of Africa where this expedition went to. And you can look at the animals that are being loaded on the ships in those drawings, and you can get an idea about where that place was and about where, at least the Egyptians during the time of Hatshepsut were saying that they thought they had originally come from. So if
it said during the time of Hatshepsut, I believe that's what he said. I think that's one of the people they talk about in the movie The Mummy. But, you know, don't quote me on that one. But again, you know, they use non-African, you know, actors to display, you know, you know, all these people, you go up to them, you know, and all these actors and say, how do you feel about, like, you know, making your living off of a plane, like, you know, ancient black people, you know, because, I mean, it's really what it is. You know, it's truly what it is, you know, and this is why, you know, they sit there and say we can't find any of the late dynasty mummies, you know, because they're not in Africa. They're in the fucking Americas, you know. And people don't want to hear this shit because they've been brainwashed. And how do you feel when somebody's in your face saying you've been brainwashed? You're like, I ain't brainwashed. Shut the fuck up. Get out of my face. It's really what it is. You know, we've been brainwashed.
The Africans from Eastern Africa had made their way into the Americas, and that became the beginning of the Egypt in the Americas, so be it. But now they had come back to the eastern side of Africa and started building that Egypt. So archaeologists will tell you we see all these monumental buildings going on from the 12th dynasty coming forward. And that's exactly where I found the autobiography of Moses. It was in the 12th dynasty of Egypt. So it of Moses. It was in the monumental buildings going on from the 12th dynasty coming forward. And that's exactly where I found the autobiography of Moses. It was monumental buildings going on from the 12th dynasty coming forward. And that's exactly where I found the autobiography of Moses. It was in the 12th dynasty of Egypt. So it's all right there in the records for you to see what was going on and to be able to piece this thing together. Once they got to the eastern side of Africa, now you've got two Egypts. And eventually that Egypt came back in, got as strong as it had been at first, and we conquered its cities in the Americas, and you'll see those wars and those narratives.
So the Bible talks about Egypt, the Bible talks about Mizraim, and the Bible talks about the place of bondage. Right? So each of these are brought up. Now we got to remember that our Bible has been it's been translated to another language, and a whole different quote-unquote testimony has now been stitched in to tell us why they're here. They're here in the Americas to bring us this news, this good news. Because Jerusalem fell, we've been overthrown as a people, and we have fallen to the curses. This is the only reason that they're here. Now they came a long way, so to help them out for their long journey and for bringing this message, they took all our gold, silver, and they killed our forefathers that that didn't agree with them. You know, we need to look at this as a nice way, pleasant way, right?
Is from then on, where they're coming in and they're regaining and then losing and then regaining the Americans. Under Pianke, there is a very enlightening record left by that pharaoh. And you will see a part of Brazil still named for him. You know, and people don't discern it.
That's what I'm saying. You don't hear about the Portuguese end of the deal that much. But, you know, something was said, you had to change the names of some things, you know, but you have to leave some kind of evidence so that when our Masonic fathers have sons, their sons can understand what's really going on. Like I said, man, these people said, we're going to sit there, we go to Jerusalem and we go find these books of witchcraft, and the books of witchcraft are called Aztec magic.
Is a...
Here, like, let me just, you know, sometimes I look for this shit, it pops up, sometimes I look for it, it don't pop up. Let's see if I can just find it real quick. How similar were Aztec witches to European witches? Well, they're going to be very similar if European witches got their magic from Aztecs. You know, it was, see how this is called pagan space right here? It was something like that, but it had to do with Freemasonry. And that's how, that was a dead giveaway. Aztec, let me type in magic and Freemasonry. Oh, look. Aztec magic, Freemasonry, and Christianity. Right? Look at this shit. Look at this. Look at this. I just typed that shit in and it says, now it's like, oh, do you want to know about the secrets? Or do you want to know about the rituals? Or do you want to know about the degrees? So tell me that shit don't exist. And I'll say, in your motherfucking face, right? Come on. Come on. See? That's what's going on, man. Why does Texas law come up? Under the Aztec legal systems, crimes were severely punished. Oh, so listen, these motherfuckers, you understand Aztecs were alive after the Spaniards came. You understand Ulysses S. Grant in the 1800s said we got 7 million Aztecs to build the railroads. They're talking here about the Aztec legal system. Oh, these guys are just savages. These guys are just savages. And they're talking here about their fucking laws. This is how their legal system... Savages don't have a fucking legal system. They got a savage has a stick. They might have a rock taped to it or tied to it with some vines. That's law for a savage. When the fuck are Christians gonna fucking get payment for what they've done? What they still do. Oh, we deny your existence. Oh, because Columbus found this place.
Very enlightening record left by that pharaoh. And you will see a part of Brazil.
Hold on, let me back it up a little bit when they're talking about, I think, Ptah or something like that.
It's for you to see what was going on and to be able to piece this thing together. Once they got to the eastern side of Africa, now you've got 2 Egypts. And eventually that Egypt came back in, got as strong as it had been at first. and we conquered the cities in the Americas, and you'll see those wars and those narratives from then on, where they're coming in and they're regaining and then losing and then regaining the Americas. Under Pianki, there is a very enlightening record left by that pharaoh. And you will see a part of Brazil still named for him. You know, and people don't discern it. You know, here is Pianki's name, first and last, on these two large districts against the Atlantic coast of Brazil. Above the place is called Sir Egypt del Rey, which meant belonging to the king of Egypt. That still shows on the map too, Sir Egypt del Rey. So you have this land that belonged to Egypt in South America that shows on the maps. And then right above it, you have this huge area of land, two districts. One carries the first name of Pianki, and the second district carries his second name. But under Pianki, he says he came from that area over to Peru, and then he's leaving an itinerary of where he's going in this reconquest of the cities. And he's traveling up through Central America in ships, and he's telling you where the cities are, the ancient cities are. And he's telling you where he's stopping and what he's doing. And eventually he makes it to Mexico, where Memphis was, and he leaves. He left this record that tells you that when he got to Memphis, he just started cursing, you know, because it was out on an island, and they could find no way to attack this city that was out on this island. And black historians don't quite get it. They did not understand that ancient Memphis had been built on an island out in the middle of a man-made lake. A man-made island built out in the middle of a man-made lake. And not in the middle, but out in the lake itself. And this became one of what they call the ancient wonders of the world. It was the lake called Tashi. And that lake was still there when the Spaniards came in the 1500s, and they drew illustrations of it, and they wrote about it, you know, and black historians are missing all of this good stuff because they're not turning their sight to the right places. They're not putting the ancient narratives against what they're seeing in the Americas.
No, because they went to college. And they have master's degrees, right? What is a master's degree? The master has given you a degree. See, the master is the system. And people do not understand that. They do not understand that. The master has to push Caucasians as the top of the system, because only Caucasians are going to use the technology to utilize the advancement of the beast. You've got to see what's really going on.
They want to follow Dr. Ben Sertima's groundbreaking work, and I don't know if it's the correct thing to say groundbreaking, since there were others that were influencing Dr. Ben Sertima, and he was extending their work. But
you hear that? Oh, he's a doctor. He's got a master's degree. Blah 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 blah. Extensive credentials, and somebody's controlling him.
Historians are missing all of this good stuff because they're not turning their sight to the right places. They're not putting the ancient narratives against what they're seeing in the Americas. They want to follow Dr. Ben Sertima's groundbreaking work, and I don't know if it's the correct thing to say groundbreaking, since there were others that were influencing Dr. Ben Sertima, and he was extending their work. But what he was writing about was a black presence, and for some reason, no one had gone in to check the narratives, the ancient black narratives, to see if they were describing the Americas. And they were. So when you go into those ancient narratives, one of the things you're going to find out is that other blacks came from West Africa into Central America during another horrendous war, the war called Troy.
Did he just say West Africans came into Central America? Now, I'm going to back it up a little bit to where he talks about this other guy.
Historians are missing all of this good stuff because they're not turning their sight to the right places. They're not putting the ancient narratives against what they're seeing in the Americas. They want to follow Dr. Van Sertima's groundbreaking work, and I don't know if it's the correct thing to say groundbreaking, since there were others that were influencing Dr. Van Sertima, and he was extending their work. But what he was writing about was a black presence, and for some reason, no one had gone in to check the narratives, the ancient black narratives, to see if they were describing the Americas. And they were. So when you go into those ancient narratives, one of the things you're going to find out is that other blacks came from West Africa into Central America during another horrendous war, the war called Troy. That's a black war. That's an inter-African war called Troy in Central America. And it's bringing thousands of blacks out of Africa into this major event. And some of them, many of them, stayed in the Americas and started forming other cities on top of Egypt's cities and building other ones outside of those satellites. And that became known as Achaea, or ancient Greece. African. The Greeks are African, not the people now claiming the name. The ones who are in your ancient narratives. These are African.
When I did the Canaanite video, on that page, I couldn't find it. It stated that the only people's DNA that goes back to the Canaanites were the Greeks and the Romans. And that's the funny thing, because they didn't want to tell you that they barely wanted to tell you that it was the American Indian. They just wanted to connect the Lapps tribe to the American Indian. They didn't want to connect to all the tribes, because it's all Canaanites.
Started forming other cities on top of Egypt's cities and building other ones outside of those satellites. And that became known as Achaea, or ancient Greece. African. The Greeks are African, not the people now claiming the name. The ones who are in your ancient narratives. These are African. And they were in the Americas. And so when they're building these cities, and they're building them often on top of other cities or extending the other cities, so this becomes Athens.
So those Incas could be like a branch of the Greeks.
And then you have Sparta sitting there. You have Delphi and Delphi. They have the different ways they want to say it, but
And in one of the books taken out of the Bible, it says that the Spartans are known to be from the seed of Abraham. Right? So they're of Abraham. That means they're Hebrew. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're Israelite, but if they're of the seed of Abraham. So he's talking about how all these people groups of Africa ended up in the Americas. How all these Canaanite groups, right? How all these Hebrews. If you're from Eber, you're a Hebrew. If you're from specifically Jacob, you're in Israel. Why, right? So how all these Hebrews were in the Americas. The book Jubilees, also taken out, but chapter 10 tells you about the Canaanites breaking the land contract right from the start. A brother just sent me a link. Let Us Find the Truth. Let Us Find the Truth sent me a link And this is to the book, Levi has visions and shows what rewards are in store for the righteous. This is chapter 3. I don't know what book it's called. When I scroll down, it says, verse 10. This is page 229. Verse 10. And I said to my father Jacob, by thee will the Lord despoil the Canaanites, and will give their land to thee and to thy seed after thee. So, you understand what's going on? In Genesis 9, this prophecy is started. Here in this book, I'm sorry I don't know the name of the book. I'm sure Let Us Know the Truth is when he sees this, he's gonna he'll just type down what the name of the book is. But in chapter 3, verse 10, there's an oath or a decree being said, from one of the 12 unto Grandpa Jacob. Because of this, it talks about Shechem down here. So because of this, the Lord's going to despoil all these Canaanites and give their land unto our children. And the guy that wants to keep that from us died a long time ago, John Wesley Powell. And I mean, even in, if I was just, making shit up to say, whoa, this is the Moab desert that's talked about in the Bible, if anything, it's a dead giveaway that I'm 100% correct, because Lake freaking Powell is here. Let's forget the Aztec gold there. Let's forget they say, hey, the war box is in this cave in this mountain. Lake Powell is the dead giveaway for John Wesley Powell. And what he's doing is, it's the same thing that the Bible says. Study to show yourself worthy. And it's the same thing that this Illuminati motto is wisdom opens the door. Right? So it's even though it's two sides of the war, two opposing sides of the war, it's the same motto, just put in different words.
These are Africans, and they were in the Americas, and so when they're building these cities, and they're building them often on top of other cities or extending the other cities, so this becomes Athens, and then you have Sparta sitting there, you have Delphi and Delphi. They have the different ways they want to say it, but
yeah, even on that, you got Delphi up there. I mean, or Delta, and Nephi over there, Nephi, right?
Anyway, Delphi is sitting there. Delphi, you will have the Greek accounts from the historians, the African historians called Greeks, and they're telling you the history of the city. And when your eyes are open and you're reading the ancient narratives, you will understand that here is the same place that ancient Egypt was talking about as well. And the biblical record is talking about it too, because this is one of the most famous oracles in all the world. Here is where the people came, the leaders came, the presidents of the nations, their pharaohs would come and ask the oracles, what say you? What should I do? Should I invade? Should I fight this? Should I join this alliance? What does God tell me I should do? And the oracle is sitting there at Delphi in Central America. And this is the place that Horace had come and taken once he defeated Cain, the biblical Cain, who is ancient Egypt's Khan, Khon. Once he defeated Heracles or Khan or Khonsu, now he's in power, and he makes this oracle become his. So its history goes all the way back 22,000 years before Alexander the Great. That temple is sitting there. That oracle is sitting there. And they would have games there, like the Olympic Games. These were the Pythian Games, every 4 years. And you will see what they call ball courts.
They call it the Pythian, right? P-I-T-H. Now, and you got to understand, it's funny because I got Genesis 10 open, and when they teach you English, they always teach you that it's I and sometimes Y. So when you change the I in Python to Y, you have the word python. And, America's known as the land of snakes. So Python is a mispronunciation in my opinion. I think it's actually python, as in the snake.
Find modern white scholars, they go all over the Central America looking for the ball courts, the Maya ball courts. These are not ball courts. These are the stadiums where they were having these athletic and musical games and competition. This is the Delphi Games, and that's why you're going to have a stadium there for the competitions that were going on there at Delphi. But now we're up to date. So let me bring us to this year.
Well, hold on. One more thing. Genesis 10 and 26 and Joktan begot, and it talks about Joktan's kids. Now, it is well known that most encyclopedias, it doesn't matter what the scholars say, most encyclopedias say that Joktan is the land of Yucatan. If you change J to a Y, it's Yoktan instead of Joktan. Yoktan, Yucatan. Alright, so that's there in the Central America area, where the big chunk of land is missing, as if somebody did something really bad. Really bad. Really bad. And a whole bunch of land and that's what we call the Gulf of the Ocean, right? That's where BP oil went and blew up the ocean floor, and then all the smoke came out looking like demons and shit, right? Let's see. BP oil spill. Oh, good. The beast is listening. Yeah, let's be creative about it. Oil spill, and then we're just put demons in it. Demon in the search. Demons. Oh, he corrects me. Hey, there were many. There weren't one. There were many. Wow. Okay, that looks creepy. Demonic faces in the DP oil. Okay, so something has to do, in my opinion. Something has to do with the BP oil spill. Oh shit! I'm gonna have a night nap, a mare nap. That's creepy. That looks like a pretty big face down there. It looks like it's got an open cavity brain. I've seen something like that on animated TV shows. That animated TV show I introduced you guys to. That Young Justice, there's a guy over there that can do that. He controls minds and shit. Looks just like that. It's kind of creepy. There's because usually you think they make that shit up, and then when you see demons, it looks just like oh fuck, it's Casper, So this is see the underwater thing. There was a guy that his name was BP something on YouTube, well, that's weird. That's weird because that's from Tully, right? That's the guy that chews glass. I know I've seen him somewhere before. See, I type in this BP oil spill and demons and all this other weird shit comes up. I mean, sometimes you can trust this motherfucker. Sometimes it just wants to show you more demons. But, you know, this one's pretty good. You know, basically in the clouds of what was being, you see it looks like a face right there. Looks like a creepy face. You know, this looks like a face, but if you look back like a ways, this whole thing looks like a face. It looks like it's lips and teeth and a nose and an eye and another eye. But then if you get close, it looks like there's a face over it and another face right here. I mean, it just looks like it's face upon face upon, and this is just leaked oil. Right? And they say, hey, I think they opened the door to hell. Alright, now I think this has to do with Babel. Again, look how I've said this in other videos, look how the Indians have such a broken tongue, Chippewa, you know, compared to everything else. I mean, even Latin, which they say is a dead language, it's not a dead language, it's a hidden language. People use it all the time. They especially use it in law. Lawyers use it all the time. If we have courts operating, then that language ain't dead. It's a language that speaks death. That's what actually it's being, you're being mistold. But even there, you know, it shows, you know, I think Babel was here. So the Tower of Babel, showing, you know, why there's a big giant chunk taken out of the Central America area. You know, so
the stadiums where they were having these athletic and musical games and competitions. This is the Delphi Games, and that's why you're going to have a stadium there for the competitions that were going on there at Delphi. But now we're up to date. So let me bring us to this year. You asked about the place, Delphi.
Oh, yeah.
I found the ancient African records that described everything about the city, from the way the city is laid out, from the hills to the river, the situation, where it was, where the river is, where the stadium is, which monuments are there, what they look like. It named them, showed you where they are. And then it came to this amazing building. And they say, in this building are the paintings where the warriors would gather and talk. This is the painting, and start describing the scenes that are painted on the wall. And you have over 200 people painted in the temple. Agamemnon is there, and the African called Achilles is there, and the African that was David's mother, King David's mother, is there, and the famous Africans and that were called Greeks, and the famous Africans that were called Trojans are painted all over this temple with their actual portraits by one of the most famed painters at that time. Wow. And the descriptions are there. And they tell you, here's Agamemnon, and this is what he has up under his left arm. This is what he's wearing. This is the kind of helmet he has on. This is what he's doing with his hand. He's standing. The man before him is kneeling. The one to the side of him is laying down. The one behind him is Achilles, and this is what he has on, and this is what he's doing. And behind him, over to the back, is a woman holding a baby, and the baby is holding his hands up to his eyes. When you have these kinds of descriptions, and then you find a temple in Central America that has every one of these images still painted in it, then you found ancient Delphi. And that's what was found. So when I told National Geographic in 2008, I was going to hold it. I didn't want to give it to them because I knew that ancient record had a lot more information. And I said, if I give this to them, they're going to go into the African king's tomb and start pulling those kings out, just like they're doing in Egypt. And I held it. I held it for 10 years. I just would not give it. But then I said, if I'm not going to be able to get blacks to understand and accept their own history, I've got to get one of the mainstream groups to publish the story so that our blacks can finally believe their own history. And so I gave National Geographic one of the ancient accounts about Delta to show them what was there and to show them that temple was described in detail. That was June 2008. And the woman wrote back, "Thank you, Horace. I am amazed at this," and she's going on. But, Horace, I am not able to, her word, entice the magazine to run the story. And then I went to USA Today. Dan Bergano is the science writer. And Dan seemed to be very, very interested, and we talked, and I shared information with him, and we went back and forth for a couple of months. And he says, "I want this story," and then the next thing I heard was, "My editor won't run it unless a Maya scientist or scholar confirms it." Well, they never confirmed Dr. Van Sertima's findings. In fact, when I talked to one of them in Dallas, he admitted, "Horace, there's no Mayanist who values their career who will admit that there is a black presence in pre-Columbian America. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen." So they knew what they were asking me to do. They knew that they were asking me to get an approval that was not going to be gotten. See, so that kills that story with USA Today. All right, so then I said, well, let me just talk to an archaeologist or scholar who I've talked with some years before, and I went to the professor at Harvard, Dr. David Carrasco, and I gave him the same information, said, "Here's Delta. Vet it, and I need your help on getting the story broken." And he was very interested, and all of a sudden the contact stopped, couldn't reach him, he was gone, and his university finally told me he had taken sabbatical. Next thing I know, the story broke in January of this year that they have found the tomb beneath the painted temple at the city of Bonampak in Mexico.
He told that dude at Harvard packed up and probably went down there on an archaeological tour to go get, hey, I don't have to be a teacher anymore. I can score a big credit discovering this shit and get paid for the rest of my life, and I don't have to sit here with these fucking students. Right? This is the actions that were brought forth from him handing over this work.
And all of a sudden the contact stopped, couldn't reach him, he was gone, and his university finally told me he had taken sabbatical. Next thing I know, the story broke in January of this year that they have found the tomb beneath the painted temple at the city of Bonampak in Mexico. Well, that's Delphi. These were the writings that I gave them. And they did exactly what I knew they would do. They would start putting out the ancient African kings. And that was their interest. They were not interested in showing the world that this was ancient Delphi and that these were the Africans that were Agamemnon and Achilles. They were not interested in that. They were not going to tell the world that the Greeks were blacks. Their interest was directly into getting to that tomb of that man who was buried, who the descriptions say was buried beneath the painted temple, beneath the second room of the painted temple. And they went directly in it. Now, the explanation they gave was, we found this tomb doing conservation work using sonar. And when I gave that to other archaeologists, they just laughed at it. That's not how we do conservation work. But they didn't find that using sonar, doing conservation work. They used sonar to see if those descriptions were correct in saying that was a tomb with a man inside beneath that second room of paintings. And when they saw that those ancient writings were correct, they went into the tomb and published that story. It's everywhere on the net. The tomb discovered at Bonampak in Mexico. So that brings us there. Now, if you are an occult...
No, you gotta understand what's going on. What they're doing is they're going in and they're finding the tomb and they're taking the body out.
Interest in your network. There is an occult attachment to the story. That man that's buried in that tomb was one of the most feared men. One of the most feared men that had lived during the time of the Trojan War. This is Achilles' son, who had desecrated religion and the temples and had done some things that were just so horrendous that when people heard of it, they could not believe that a man had done such a thing to offend God, and at that time, gods. You know, they just could not believe that someone had done what this man had done. And for what he did, the sacrilege he did, when he went to Delphi, they killed him. And they buried him in that temple. And that's whose tomb they opened. One of the most feared men. And not long after that, Haiti's grounds crumbled. And you might not understand this, but once that happened, then the rain started falling on Peru and started washing away the roads there. That's a country that hardly experiences rain. But here's a rain so heavy that it washed out the roadways and stranded visitors to Machu Picchu. The ground broke in Haiti. The rains came in Peru after they went in that man's tomb. Anyway, that's your story of Delphi.
Oh, brother. We're winding down, but we have a couple of calls on the switchboard. We're going to try to take some quick calls. For those of you who are calling in, we're winding down, so please try to make your questions, just keep it to the point, because we want to try to get the questions in. And we're going to take our first caller from the 803 area code. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, please, bro.
Peace. How are you?
I'm good. Y'all giving out some excellent information, man. Really enjoying the show. I had a question for the brother. Is this newfound information that you got, is it in your book, or are you going to make revive that in your book? Is it not?
Delphi is not in the book. The book establishes the geography of where the places were. It lets you know where the things happened, what happened. It gets you ready for the people. And then the second attempt was to bring you King David and the people that led up to King David, and to start putting the understanding of the people on the table as well. But the book it's going to hold you. It's so much information in that book that when publishers saw it, they actually wanted to break it up into 3 different books. So there's a lot of information there. A lot of information. Once you come out of When Rocks Cry Out, at the end of that reading, you're going to be ahead of the curve, and you will know things. And more than that, the things that are in that book are footnoted. So it'll tell you where the text came from that I'm using. So you'll see it's not my opinion. You can see where I got it from, and you can go, and if you're really sharp, you're going to go into these writings and find everything else that's in those writings as well. I couldn't put everything in that book and keep it in a size that people would read.
Yeah. So how can I get your book? You got it
everywhere. Everywhere online. Everywhere online.
Amazon.
You can even walk into a Barnes & Noble and they can order it. The problem is, they said, this is crazy, but I'm going to have to tell you anyway. When I first wrote this book, an agent came in and she said that she could guarantee a large advance on the book if I would take out the black presence and take out the biblical discoveries. Yeah.
That's not surprising. That's, to me, brother, that's not surprising the way they...
No, it's not surprising. What she said was, and I asked her the why, and she said, well, if we're going to give you a 6-figure advance, we'd like to know that we'll be able to get our money back. Now, the deal is...
Well, I'm going to rewind this, and I want you to hear that again. Now, first off, if they push that book, then they know that their readers are going to know that they're on biblical land. and that all these discoveries that have been found throughout Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, New York, all of it has to do with biblical discoveries.
Continue anyway. When I first wrote this book, an agent came in and she said that she could guarantee a large advance on the book if I would take out the black presence and take out the biblical discovery.
That's not surprising. That's, to me, brother, that's not surprising the way they...
No, it's not surprising. What she said was, and I asked her the why, and she said, well, if we're going to give you a 6-figure advance, we'd like to know that we'll be able to get our money back. Now, the deal is, the way she explained it was that there are some blacks who are interested in black history, but it's such a small group compared to the whole of the readership group that they were not confident that they would be able to earn back a large advance paid on it. But that if I only gave them Egypt being discovered in the Americas, without putting in the blacks, without putting in Jerusalem and the biblical, that they had a huge readership for ancient Egypt.
Because they already wrote themselves into Egypt as white Egyptians. Even though the Greeks were black, they pressed that the Greeks are white. Right? So if they discover Greeks in America, Egyptians in America, right? They say, oh, well, the blacks had the Egypt on the other side of the world in Africa because you can see the writing on the wall. And then they would say here, each discovery, they would whitewash the walls or hide the bodies like they have been. You saw that Caucasians say, well, each of these discoveries, I can't really talk about it. This has to do with the Smithsonian John Wesley Powell. This dude died in the late 1890s, right? Why do they keep bringing up his name? Because it's ideology.
To the whole of the readership group, that they were not confident that they would be able to earn back a large advance paid on it. But that if I only gave them Egypt being discovered in the Americas, without putting in the blacks, without putting in Jerusalem and the biblical, that they had a huge readership for ancient Egypt, and that they would welcome that book and pay a large advance for it and go forward for it. So when I would not take that out, then of course that kills my invitation from New York to publish the book. So we had to get it done other ways. But still, I got it produced by the largest book distributor in the world, Ingram. And so Ingram distributes everywhere, and they are the major distributor. So wherever Ingram distributes, you can get that book, and including Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and Barnes & Noble store itself, and almost everywhere online you'll see it. And not in just the United States. It's also printed in Europe.
All right. Okay, brother, we have to move on to our next caller because we're winding down. But Brother Horace will be back. But check Occult Science Radio's main page. It's featured right there, and you can order it right there. But thank you very much for calling in, brother.
Thanks.
Much appreciated. And we're going to take our next caller from the 704 area code. Paul, are you there?
Yes, I am. My question is more focused on what happened to, like, all of the Africans that ended up in Brazil? Were they there because they were, Africans that migrated there, or were they brought there as slaves?
Well, they will tell you that when you find these major pockets of Africans in South America, and even at the place where Ivan Van Sertimac come from in Guyana, they'll tell you that's a remnant of what was brought over during slavery. There were slaves, and they were not slaves. There were Africans kidnapped and taken out of Africa and brought into South America, of course. But when you have over 22,000 years of history of blacks in the Americas, they didn't all pack up and leave the Americas when Spain came in and started invading. So yeah, you're going to have the black cities, the ancient black cities, and the blacks themselves and their descendants in South America. So Brazil was major. It's my belief that whole nation called Brazil is named for the Africans who saved King David. You'll see that in the Old Testament writings, that when his son took the city, Absalom came in to take David's throne, he fled. And he went to West Africa. He went to Mali. They call it Mahli, but it's Mali. It's Mali, Mali in West Africa. And that the king there who took him under his wing and kept him, who kept King David, was, they'll call him Mount Barzillai. But you just flip your R and your A and put it where it is. So either Brazil should be Barzillai, or the king's name in the Old Testament should be spelled a little differently. But I'm thinking Brazil is named for their king that helped David. In fact, when you read the biblical account, south of the Amazon River is Moab, which is going to put you right back in West Africa where this king was. So all those things are related. Yeah, there are Africans that were in the Americas long before.
So whether it's two different Moabs, whether once Moab North was destroyed, they migrated or diaspora south. There's a Moab below south of the Amazon River.
The transatlantic kidnapping began.
Okay, so then my next part of that question would be, if they were already there, did they become enslaved by the people coming from Europe and, the other countries?
Yeah, well, if you hung around and did not know how to escape or could not escape that form.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's very gentle about that. It's pretty obvious. So, he states, if you didn't know it was coming or you didn't try to escape, then of course you were captured. And this is how we were brought to North America as a whole. Like, there were slaves in South America. There is a caste system of blacks intermingled with Spanish on one side of the country and intermingled with Portuguese on the other side of the country.
Okay, so then my next part of that question would be, if they were already there, did they become enslaved by the people coming from Europe and, the other countries?
Yeah, if you hung around and did not know how to escape or could not escape that formed invasion, maybe sometimes you would be forced into servitude. But yeah, that would be a part of it. They did not treat them as though they were different people than the Africans they had brought into the Americas.
See, this is the point of being able to say African American and being able to say your DNA goes back to Africa, but leaving out the point that your forefathers came here thousands of years ago. See, there's not just Hebrews here. There's just not Canaanites here. There's just not Mongoloid Canaanites. There's also black Canaanites. And they were all here. The Canaanites left before Egypt was set up. So when Egypt comes here, the Canaanites, each group, even Moab, being a Shem bloodline, are already set up. Egypt's the new kid on the block at that point. Hebrews are coming in to destroy it all. They just left Egypt. How do you think they feel about Egyptians during Joshua's campaign?
To them, an African was an African.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to get the book. I ordered it last week from Barnes & Noble.
You hear that? To them, an African is an African. To them, it doesn't matter if you're Hebrew from Shem. The Bible says you were born in Africa. And their laws, it deals with where you were born. So they call you an African American, an African living on American soil. They call themselves a European American. But they push this European title aside and just call themselves Americans. And they push your American title aside and they call you just Africans. Because they have taken the land that your ancestors are buried all throughout. And they set up this system called archaeology. So what they're doing is they're going out throughout different sections of land, especially that have temples, and they're taking out your black DNA. And then claiming a discovery. Now that the DNA is found, now that the images are covered or changed, now we have a discovery. Ooh, we've discovered this temple. We don't know who it belonged to. We're going to date it to millions of years ago. It could have been from people from another planet that didn't like to paint pictures. This is the game that's going on. This is the game that has been going on until I was born.
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling in, sister. Excellent questions. Excellent.
So again, based on her question, based on his answer, you didn't come here in no fucking boat. You migrated here thousands of years ago. Through war, you've been migrating back and forth throughout the country. Throughout the continent. Up and down, back and forth. Central America, South America, North America, Canada.
Questions. And, believe me, time flies when powerful information is being brought forth. We have about 4 minutes left, brother. And, as I always say, we're just touching the surface tonight. I'm already sitting here in my mind and planning your next appearance because, you have, judging from the feedback we're getting from the chat room, everyone is primed, but just take a minute or two to let everybody know, to repeat where we can get the book and what you got coming up.
Well, like I said, online, when rocks cry out, you can find it most online places.
All right, you can find the book online. You go to Amazon.com. You can find the book. It's called When Rocks Cry Out. Based upon when you dig up the past, and you hide it for so long, then the rocks, finally start screaming out, about our history. So people, I encourage you to watch these videos on, that Horace Butler, discusses these places. I don't mind arguing, is Moab in Utah or is it in South America? Either way, we got to go to one of those places. But we need to make decisions now for leaving in 6 months. You can't make decisions now and be ready to leave in 2 weeks. You can't make decisions now and be ready to leave in 2 months. It's not going to make sense. You're going to leave something, you'll forget something. Be prepared. Make the decisions now to be able to leave in 5 to 6 to 7 months. And here we go. This comes up. Let's see if we can blow it up. Okay, so there you got your delta, right? And then you have your Nephi. Isn't this Egyptian stuff? Or that's Mormon stuff, your Nephi, and then you have your delta, that's Egyptian stuff. So here you have the Spanish coming all through here, Spanish fork. Now this is important, you'll find out why in 5 minutes, 5 measly minutes, you'll find out why. Alright, so here you have the desert of Moab, starts here, right? And desert of Moab goes all the way into Arizona, into what? Phoenix, ends right at Phoenix. See, all this is the desert of Moab. So when the Bible says the desert of Moab, it's talking about all this. See how here's Reef National Park is part of Moab. Canyons National Park is part of Moab. Arches National Park is part of Moab. All these parks is part of Moab. Bryce Canyon Park is part of Moab. So I'm not even sure like the complete area that's considered the national parks, or that's considered the Moab Desert, but it's pretty much right in there. Now here's the most fucked up thing. Are you ready? Remember, John Wesley Powell, right? What's right there in the center? Lake Powell. This motherfucker came in there and incorporated himself into the Moab Desert. Anybody know that there's that much water in the damn desert? I'm not so afraid of going in the desert now. It's just, everything that I've been highlighting right now is all right here. There ain't no damn giant lake all the way up into that. But look at that, man. Powell, prick Powell put his name on the lake. What do you even say about that, man? Salt Lake City somewhere. I'm not sure. But, Wyoming, Idaho. Wow, I haven't looked at a map for a long time. There's Colorado over there. Okay, so I thought Colorado was above Utah. That's embarrassing. There's Salt Lake City real big. So, yeah, see, I'm horrible with maps. See Ephraim right here? It just says Ephraim. Hey, last time we left off, we went 10 minutes straight and then added some more things. Now, I'm going to scroll down in this video. I want to show you this. Now you have the ancient... Oops. Well, that's fine. That really doesn't matter. Here you go. I'm going to show you all the videos of Horace Butler, and we're going to look at all the low numbers. As if nobody gives a shit that the information's out there. Ancient America's in the Bible. Alright, so America's and Bible in the title. 6,700 views. That's it. You stuff a cat down somebody's butt crack on this thing, and you'll get millions of views. America's in the Bible, relatively no views. Horace Butler, When Rocks Cry Out, it's roughly, out of a million, same bracket around 5,000, 6,000 views. KTL presents, this is on Tyrone Street. He's got 9,000 views. He breaks that mold. When Rocks Cry Out, book trailer, 5,000 views. Rocks Cry Out, 4,000 views. So, this information about our history has been here for some time. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's something that is keeping us apart. It's the knowledge of who we all are. And I don't mean we're all Hebrew or anything like that. The problem is, if ancient Egypt came to America, that means the black Egyptians are here. If the Hebrews followed and overthrew them, that means there's animosity between the two groups. That means both groups have afros. At this point in history, you can see why they haven't gotten along. If the Egyptians came here, and they were Canaanites here already, and we hear more that they're Canaanite areas, and we rarely hear anything about Egypt, but we always hear about American Indian this, American Indian that, then there was some kind of power struggle between the Egyptians and the Canaanites. Both of Ham's children, both African bloodlines. So there is also Moab.
That Columbus was trying to get to the Far East, and he stumbled across the Americas and that kind of thing. That's not what happened. Columbus knew what was over here. The Crusades had already been coming to the Americas. I mean, once you have ancient Egypt in the Americas, and David taking that capital city of Thebes and making it be Jerusalem. In fact, it was already a city that was close to that name. It was built to honor the African Heru, and they just switched the name just a little bit. Heru became Jeru. But once you understand that Jerusalem was sitting in South America, then you have to understand that this is where the Crusades were coming.
So, when the Bible says that Ephraim's in the north and Judah is in the south, you're being told for the last 4 years that Jerusalem is in Peru. Now listen again, because this is somebody completely different telling you. This is somebody you've never heard before.
But once you understand that Jerusalem was sitting in South America, then you have to understand that this is where the Crusades were coming. So they knew of the history of the Americas. They knew the Holy Lands were here. That's why they're always getting on ships and coming to the Crusades. You know, you could walk from where they're calling themselves Italy and France, and you can...
Here, I'll put it to you like this. Yeah, he makes a good point there. You can walk from Italy and France and shit to the Middle East. Alright, listen, they said the Crusades were about the Knights Templar going into the ruins of Jerusalem and finding the books of witchcraft that the king buried under the throne so nobody could get to him. Okay? That's what it's really about. So they say they discovered this stuff and the Crusades ended. Right? When you go and chase down the books that they found, right? So you should just go and see Enoch right down there. Why do they have all these biblical names there? There's Kanab. Remember we were looking at Kanab? Kana. Okay? So there's Montezuma Creek. That's what he wanted us to see. Montezuma Creek. Montecillo. That's also something that has to do with Mexico. Now listen, this is why it's important.
I see, excellent. And yeah, that's why I totally agree, Brother Horace, because many times, before I just turned 48 years old, and I've been studying Black history and many things for many years. And when we talk about, when the brothers and sisters here in the United States, when we talk about our history, two things that we always attach to ourselves, ancient Kemet and slavery. And you're absolutely right. I find that, many people,
ancient Kemet and slavery is the two things that we attach to ourselves. That is the division that separates us too, constantly. Ancient Kemet dealing with what the Bible says, Egypt, Mizrahim, a land of bondage, right? Where were you in bondage? And that leads to versus slavery. The Israelites are known for being born into slavery.
This very day still believe that black people didn't touch Western civilization shores until we were dragged over here in slave ships. For some reason or another, many of them cannot grasp the fact that we were already here. And we were all over the place. And yes, to this day, you're absolutely right. That knowledge is still being resisted. People holding their heads that, we didn't see this part of the globe until we arrived on slave ships.
Yeah, well, I eventually found that even slavery part of hiding the information. When Spain came into the Americas in the 1500s following Columbus, they knew what was here. We were taught in school.
Who is Hebrew and Afro? Well, actually, they're Hebrew and they could be Afro or they could be Hebrew with. They are the children of Lot. Period. They could have afros, but for right now, it seems they have straight hair. Or slightly curled to no curl. That seems to be Moab. Amorites have waves. We can depict everybody by the phenotype right now. Bring out every book that depicts what and who everybody is. This is not hard anymore. It's time consuming. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's time consuming. Which isn't a problem. Because I already told him I got the time for you. I said you had the time to make me, to form me. I have the time. I have all the time that you can create for me to use to give right back. All the time in the world. So we're gonna go back to the 8-minute and 40-second mark, because this is where the next comment that breaks past the 10-minute mark starts. Okay, so we don't want to hear 10 minutes and then hear it out of context. We want to hear it in context, so we have to go back to 8:40. Now, this is really important. Watch this. Comments. Somebody sent me a comment, but I already approved it. Oh, that's why it's not right there on the screen. That's great. Lex, did you know that in Utah there is a creek called Montezuma Creek? It almost borders Arizona and the southeastern part of the state. And he sends me a link. And that's awesome. Hey, if you guys have comments, leave links. I don't want to believe you. You don't want to trust me, which you have every right not to. I don't want you to trust me either. I'll have you doing silly stuff if you trust me. Don't trust any man. Right? I've said that from the start. Don't trust anybody. That's how come every time I do anything, I show you. Right? Was wondering if you happen to come across any info about this honey research. So he sends a link, and we're looking for Montezuma Creek.